Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another reaction video. Today, I just want to start off by saying thank you very much for 500 subscribers. I really appreciate it. This unlocks the YouTube community tab thing, whatever. So what I did is that I held a poll where I picked 5 videos from the Discord that have all been suggested by you guys or people who are a part of the Discord. If you want to join the Discord, link is in the description below. And this was the video that won, the Pig War Oversimplified. Usually when I cover these videos, I know something about the topic, but this one, I don't know anything. I know the pig war was like this weird, I know it wasn't a war, first off. And I know it was like this weird proxy thing where some generals, they wanted to go to war with Britain to sort of relieve the tension between North and South at this point. I think this is only a few years off the Civil War. And that's it. That's all I know. I don't know how it happened. I don't know what a pig has to do with any of this. But yeah, so thankfully our friend Oversimplified is here to help us explain it all. So without further ado, let's get into the video. If you haven't already, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll probably make this video 2 parts because it's a 39-minute long video. So it'll probably be 2 parts, but who knows? We'll see. So let's get into it. The Pig War Oversimplified.
Look at us, boys. We've only gone in
And I forgot to pour
bloody
water.
We beat the
Big
Brits
mistake.
and secured independence. Now to expand westward and conquer the rest of the continent. Thomas? It looks like a bunch of different people already live out west. What? Oh no. That means we can't expand.
Nope.
I hate my life. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I didn't say they were white people.
Okay. All right. Cool.
At the end of the revolution,
Brutal intro, but fair enough.
War. When the United States secured its independence from Great Britain, the two sides met in Paris to settle the terms. Among various things, they discussed American territorial gains, and the British granted them a generous amount of land out west. However, Benjamin Franklin appeared to have an additional fascination. Oh, Canada. So voluptuous. You think we can maybe acquire some of that? Quit ogling our territory. But look at those curves. I'd worry less about Canada's curves and more about your own curves, Benjamin. Many in America suggested that one day the Canadian colonies should become a part of the United States. In response, Britain suggested that many in America should shut the hell up.
Yes, exactly.
Well, if Britain wasn't going to give up Canada, then the two sides had to agree on where to put their border.
Yeah, and so this really comes down to, and this is before the founding of Canada. Canada was founded in 1867. Or I believe this was before the founding of Canada in 1867, but we'll find out. That was Confederation, where it was Upper Lower Canada. John Macdonald was the first Prime Minister of Canada, et cetera, et cetera. But that is really one of the founding tenets of Canada in and of itself, right? Anti-Americanism, so being as far removed from the Americans as possible. And while a lot of the times that doesn't exactly mean economically, because the United States is our biggest trading partner. I think like 70% of all our exports go to the United States. It means that culturally, we try and stay as Canadian as possible. Now, I'm sort of against this narrative. If you want a really interesting couple of videos on this topic, go check out JJ McCullough, a bit of a kind of controversial Canadian YouTuber, but he's really great. And he talks a lot about this sort of difference of anti-Americanism when it comes to Canadianism, if you will. So you can even see that at this point, that, yeah, it was all about keeping the Americans out and keeping Canada, at this point, British, or what would later be Canadian.
Easy enough for the most part. Follow some existing borders, add in a few rivers and lakes, maybe even a parallel for good measure. But then there was a question. What would
Lake of the Woods doesn't look like that.
happen here? Straight line, straight line. And so it was. The border would go from the northwesternmost point of this perfectly oval-shaped lake and continue in a straight line westward until it met the Mississippi River.
That's not the Mississippi River.
Or was it? Well, as it turned out, the lake didn't actually look like this, but like this. And the Mississippi wasn't here, but here. So in the end, none of that made even the slightest bit of sense. Don't blame the founding fathers. They were just using the best map available. Blame the guy who made it. But to the minds of the day, the issue had been solved, and it was finally time to start getting along. Oh, back to war they go. The Glorious War of 1812 saw
so way before a Canadian Federation, by the way.
Americans try to invade Canada, and the British burned down the White House. But when all was said and done, it was pretty much a draw. And once again, America and Britain had to enter into peace negotiations. By now, both sides realized the original border they came up with was a piece of hot garbage. And since America had also recently obtained a huge amount of land from Napoleon, they decided they would need to re-examine the border issue.
Exactly. So the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, one of the largest land acquisitions of the United States government ever. Unless they somehow acquire some other ginormous piece of land somewhere else, I think it'll be the biggest ever. Bought from Napoleon, because at this point he was fighting everyone, as Napoleon was doing. So this was purchased from him. And the funny thing too is that the debt that the United States took on came from English banks. So they purchased land from the French, which the French used the capital to then go to war with England. So England was basically financing a war against itself from this transaction, which, I don't know, I find that pretty funny. Straight line. Again, right?
Straight line. And so it was. To fix the problems of the previous border agreement, they decided to go from the northwesternmost point of this lake, as had been previously agreed, down to the 49th parallel, and from there the line would go straight as an arrow up until the Rocky Mountains. But beyond the Rockies, the two sides couldn't quite agree on where it would go next, because both sides claimed the territory beyond the Rockies was theirs. See, throughout its early history, America as a nation had its eyes heavily fixated on all that juicy land out west, ripe for invasion.
Manifest destiny.
Settlementation. America wanted to expand. Not only was it their right, some believed it was a destiny given to them by God himself to multiply and spread across the continent.
Yeah, and so this is really one of the founding American stories, right? Sort of the first, what would you say, century of American history. Actually, everything pretty much pre-Civil War is all about manifest destiny and slavery. Other YouTubers have talked about this. Vlogging Through History has talked a lot about this. I think those are pretty much the two founding points of America at this point. Is manifest destiny, continue to move west, and obviously Mexico would gain its own independence from Spain. This would cause this would cause issues with Mexico, right? Texas becoming independent to become part of the United States, etc. Florida. So yeah, really one of the highlight points at this time period is manifest destiny, and it's hugely, hugely important.
Like rats or disease. Okay, guys, just before we take over everything, God definitely said this is what we're meant to do, right? Yeah, that's what he said, right? Isn't that what he said? And who was it who spoke to God? It was Billy, right? I thought it was Sharon's cat.
Joseph Smith or something?
Well, it was...
He believes Jesus is American, right?
It was one of us. There's no way we made this whole thing up to justify our ruthless collective imperialist tendencies. All right, well, in that case, let's get out there and make the world a better place, just as God intended. This belief in divinely destined expansion would
All right, that was fantastic.
later be given its very own name, manifest destiny.
Yeah.
But America wasn't the only one interested in controlling the Western territories. At the time, Canada was made up of a number of colonies, collectively referred to as British North America. This one over here was owned by the Hudson's Bay Company, a British charter company dedicated to turning as many beavers as possible into as many felt hats as possible, as quickly as possible. And the indigenous people became a key supplier. As a result...
So even on top of that too, there was, maybe this is another oversimplified video at some point, but there were the Beaver Wars, actually, if we're talking about wars about animals. The Beaver Wars, which happened during the 17th century between the Iroquois and the Huron around this territory here off the Hudson's Bay River, because beavers, jokes aside though, became sort of like fashion statements in Europe. And there were beaver exports was made a lot of money, a lot of money. And it's one of the sort of founding items, symbols, whatever, of our country. And so there were wars fought between the Iroquois and the Huron with, oh God, don't screw this up, with the Huron siding with the French and the Iroquois siding with the British. And there were some really deadly conflicts and deadly battles over beaver pelts in the north here in Canada. So yeah, there you go. Just a little bit of beaver history for you. They're not just cute. No, they are just cute things, but there's been a lot of blood spilled over beavers.
The British were also eager to control the land out west and secure that region's valuable resources, and in particular, the Great Columbia River was deemed vital to the beaver business. So when it came to the question of what would happen to the border beyond the Rockies, the conversation went a little like this. The line should keep going straight because we're manifestly destined to gain the entire North American continent. No, we need this river so we can keep scalping beavers. Look, why don't we just draw the border along the river? That way we both have access to it. Well, that would be a completely fair compromise that protects the interests of both parties. And there's no way I'm ever going to agree to it! Having come to a roadblock, both sides simply agreed that for now, they would jointly occupy the Northwestern Territory. They were both free to settle and trade there. But rest assured, the agreement was only temporary. Eventually somebody would get their way. Listen, Yank, we can jointly occupy this land, but I ain't sharing anything else. I don't want to see you using my toothbrush. I don't want to catch you wearing my underwear. And I don't want to catch you using my computer and selling my data to advertisers.
Ah, nice.
Well, then you, my friend, should use NordVPN. What the
that was
Do you like giving strangers your passwords to your most important online account?
Outstanding.
Me neither. And that's why I use NordVPN.
Not even like
NordVPN has
not
thousands
even like
of
a
secure
hint.
servers in over 60 countries.
That was, man, Oversimplified is the king of these.
Oh yeah. Bickering over boundaries, manifesting destiny, and a joint occupation of Oregon. And one man living here who felt the territory should be British was James Douglas, the Hudson's Bay Company's no-nonsense chief factor at Fort Vancouver. Ah, what a beautiful, unspoiled corner of the British Empire. I've got my Spotted Dick, my Spice Girls fan club membership, and...
For those who don't know, Spotted Dick is like a pastry that's, I think it's made from like dried fruit or something. It's like a pastry with dried fruit in it. I've had it before and I didn't really like it. The name... Yeah, it doesn't live up to its name, I guess.
An unrelenting negative outlook on life that affects everyone around me. What are you looking at, Stephen? Yes. Truly British. What the? The problem for men like Douglas was that many Americans had already begun streaming up the Oregon Trail.
Yeah, I think one thing here is like, obviously he's playing it for jokes, but it's not like Americans at this point were so wildly different to the British or the British settlers, you know, Canadians, if you will, at this point that it was just like, these crazy Yanks invading us. Like culturally, they were obviously quite similar. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of tension still between the British and the Americans post 1812, and I wouldn't say to this day, but you know, there's always those things.
Gunslinging, howdy neighboring, diarrhea having. By the thousands, they were pouring into the Oregon Territory in search of land to settle and farm. This, however, crowded out the fur trade, and eventually, a very bitter Douglas and the other Hudson's Bay traders at Fort Vancouver were ordered to relocate north to a new base of operations. But the Americans keep coming and they don't stop coming. Hopped in their wagons and they hit the ground running. Didn't make sense to keep sharing Oregon when they outnumbered the Brits more than 6-1. And suddenly, the whole joint occupation deal was being called into question. Newly elected President Polk maintained that America had an obvious claim to the entire region, even implying a possible war with Britain. Fiery language from U.S. senators declared that American rifles would annihilate the Hudson's Bay Company in Oregon, and America even gave Britain notice that it was pulling out of the joint occupation agreement. The British were alarmed as the two sides stood on the brink of war. But in the end, neither truly wanted to fight. The British favored maintaining good economic relations, while the Americans had already gotten themselves into a war with Mexico. So after a bit of back and forth, the British finally said, "Fine, you wanted a straight line? There's your straight line." And so, the agreement was made. The border would continue directly to the Strait of Georgia, but because the British insisted they keep Vancouver Island, it would then move south through the center of the channel and on to the Pacific Ocean. Finally, the issue of the northwest border had been solved. Hold the phone. Discrepancy detected. Enhance frame, 200%. Enhance. Enhance. Oh, too far. Perfect. Now, show me the exact wording of the treaty. The line of boundary goes to the middle of the channel, and thence southerly through the middle of said channel? But there's loads of channels. So, you tell me, dear viewer, which channel is the treaty referring to? And therefore, who owns these islands? Is the wording of the treaty maybe a little too vague? Well, that's exactly the problem encountered by the people living in the area. The British insisted that the channel intended by the treaty was the Rosario Strait, and therefore the islands were British.
Of course, and
The
the
Americans,
Americans are
on the
gonna
other
say,
hand,
yeah.
argued that the intended channel was the Harrow Strait, and therefore the islands were American. At times, the debate became rather heated. Even the individual...
You gotta wonder, like, how many points throughout all of history has that happened, right? Where some treaty kind of reminds me of some of the other treaties that the British Empire have been involved in, where it just says, where it's unclearly worded, which leads to just ungodly amounts of tension and fighting and wars, bloodshed. I wonder if there's a list of something like this.
Individuals who negotiated and signed the treaty at times didn't seem entirely sure which channel the treaty meant, and representatives from the Hudson's Bay Company begged them to make it clearer. But thousands of miles away, the people in power simply had more to worry about than some tiny islands in the middle of nowhere. Order! Order!
Really, this is the best video.
All right, listen up. We got a lot to get through. The 7th Earl of Chissingham says he encountered a foul beast in the fields of Upper Fardingdom late last night and put this sketch together? That's a poor person, Darren. Ugh. Next, Lord Piddlingham says he has a new mole on his backside? How is that parliamentary business, George? Oh, some islands in the Pacific Northwest are in dispute and could lead to a war with America? Boring. Fine, let's take a look at that mole, George. And so, for now, the islands were simply held in dispute. Were they British or were they American? I'm sure this conflict won't cause anyone to die. And one man who thought the islands were undeniably British was James Douglas, now the governor of Vancouver Island. He had already once had American settlers encroach on his territory and force him to move. And by golly, he wasn't going to let it happen again. As far as he was concerned, those islands were not only British, but prime agricultural land. And given the chance, those glubby Yanks wouldn't hesitate to start pitching flags with their glubby little hands. And so, he came up with a plan. If the British settled the islands first, then that would surely secure them for Britain. And so in 1853, Douglas sent an Irishman by the name of Charles Griffin, along with some Hawaiian shepherds, to go set up a sheep farm on San Juan Island. And set up a sheep farm they did. The place was rammed with sheep, 1,369 to be exact. But within those flocks of woolly cowards could also be found a number of beautiful, prized Berkshire pigs. Oh, Porky, you look stunning.
Oh,
You're the
that's weird.
greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Would you perhaps like to go to the island ball together tonight? Oink once for no. Roll around in that cow crap if yes. Yes! I'm covered in poo and I'm the luckiest man alive! But life on the island for Charles Griffin wasn't to be a perfect
Weird.
paradise of pig pageants. Because unfortunately for him, the Americans also believed the island was theirs. One day, in 1854, an American customs collector was sailing around the islands on the outlook for bands of native tribesmen when he spotted something. Aha! I've got you now, you savages. Over yonder. Those are sheep, sir. Sheep, you say? What are they doing here? Let's go and negotiate with them. Negotiate with sheep? Are you crazy? I'm perfectly stable, you rat bag! Call me crazy again and I'll eat your eyes! Hello, good sir. We request to speak with your leader. Out of my way. Allow me to parley with this foul beast. Hey, stop threatening my sheep. Your sheep? You mean to tell me that you, a British subject, have illegally imported these sheep into American territory? I'll have you know that you, an American, are currently trespassing on British territory. The Americans felt that they were entitled to collect taxes on the British property, because the island was American, and they threatened seizure if dues weren't paid. The British, meanwhile, threatened to arrest the Americans, because the island was British, and the two sides were in a standoff. To give Charles Griffin the legal power to deal with the American trespassers, Douglas said, "Hey, put on this wig." Boom, you're a magistrate now. And in turn, Griffin went to one of his Hawaiian shepherds and said, "Hey, I'm making you a constable. Put on this badge." The British then went off to arrest the US Customs Inspector. But, being an American, he emerged from his tent with 4 pistols and a giant knife, so the Brits had to back down. Eventually, raids by northern tribes chased the US officer from the island, but the Americans weren't done yet.
Wait, by northern tribes? So that's one. Obviously, the history of Native Americans in Canada is a very long and complex history. But that's a little confusing to me. So wait, were there also northern tribes living on this island too? So obviously Britain claimed a bunch of land that technically wasn't theirs, although the history of treaty settlements of Canada is far more complicated than that. But then, so are these islands also inhabited by natives too? If you're saying that there were raids, or were there natives living on the mainland that were also raiding these? Okay, that's kind of confusing to me. Maybe he'll clarify that up, or you could let me know in the comment section if you know as well. 20 minutes into this, 14 minutes into the video. All right, we'll see how far we get.
Officials from nearby Whatcom County in Washington Territory believed the island fell under their jurisdiction, and they decided it was time to make the British pay up once and for all. They sent one Sheriff Barnes to go confront Charles Griffin. Hey, you owe us $80.33 for all
5537808. That's what I always remember. That's like some grade school
this
stuff.
farm stuff you got here. Go suck an egg! Oh, I see. So that's how it is, huh? That's how it's gonna be, is it? That's the way in which things are, eh? That be how it will, is it? Will it be how that is, huh? That be the way in which things be the way they are, is it? Get off my property! So the sheriff and other Whatcom County officials felt they were now well within their rights to seize and auction off Griffin's sheep in order to recoup lost taxes. And who would they auction these prized breeding rams off to but themselves? Then, in a pretty chaotic scene, they worked to tie the rams to their boats. And when Charles Griffin came running to rescue his kidnapped sheep, being Americans, they pulled out guns on him, and he had to back down. In all, Charles Griffin lost 34 breeding rams, and he was furious.
You got to think too, 34 breeding rams at this point, that's a lot of money. A lot of money. I mean, that is tens of thousands of dollars, right? You can imagine someone making off with tens of thousands of dollars of your assets, and whether animals should be assets, that's a whole other discussion, but of your assets at the time, right? I mean, hey, I'm with you. Like, I would be absolutely furious as well if these people came and sort of claimed your island and then stole your sheep, which you need to make your livelihood from. Yeah, I'd be pretty upset too.
The British complained to the American government, who were shocked to hear what had been going on at their northwest border. And both governments told their officials in the area to back off. We're not trying to start a major war over some dumb sheep and a stupid island. But also, the islands are definitely ours. Under no circumstances let the other side have them. For now, both governments agreed to set up yet another boundary commission to decide which channel was the correct border. But it often devolved into petty bickering. The British did make one interesting suggestion, though. We could draw the border through this middle channel and split the islands between us. Well, that would be a completely fair compromise that protects the interests of both parties. And there's no way I'm ever going to agree to it! And in the
He's a Kalashnikov.
of the sheep raid, James Douglas, still stationed at Fort Victoria, became even more cautious of American encroachment into his territory. Mr. Douglas, sir, it appears an Indian has discovered gold in the Fraser Canyon, just north of here. Shut up! Keep your voice down, boy. We can't risk those glubby Americans hearing about this, or our territory here will be infested with them. Oh no! The Fraser Canyon Gold Rush attracted a heap of Americans to the region. Some got lucky. Most did not. And of those that didn't, rather than returning all the way home, many simply decided to settle in the area.
Yeah, and this actually happened to quite a few gold rushes, right? The California Gold Rush probably being the most famous, but there was also the Yukon Gold Rush. And this was another... Yukon, by the way, is quite a bit further up north here. It's one of Canada's territories. And a lot of people had decided to stay in the Yukon, though the overwhelming majority left. But that did sort of give a rise to populations in the Northwest Territories. And I think Yukon to this day is actually the most populated territory out of all of them.
And in particular, the juicy green pastures of San Juan Island were rather appealing. Believing the island was American territory, around a dozen American settlers moved there in the late 1850s. One of them was a man named Lyman Cutler, a young man in his mid-20s, and lazy as pie. He didn't want to have to clear a space in the forest to build his home, so he said, I'll just build my cabin right in the middle of this British sheep run. I'm sure that won't make anyone mad. When he planted potato seeds in his garden, rather than building a nice protective fence around them, he said, I'll just fence in 3 sides and hope all these British farm animals have a moral compass and respect my property rights.
Okay. Oh, not Porky.
Griffin's pig was a Berkshire, well known for rooting.
And Berkshire pigs, by the way, are really expensive. I think that's like the creme de la creme of pigs, if I remember correctly. So this is a very high valuable pig.
And Lyman's fairly pathetic fence made for a bad combination. Numerous times he had had to chase the pig away from his property, and he once angrily marched up to Griffin's home, saying, "Hey, British farm idiot, keep your stupid pig out of my potatoes. It is up to you to keep your potatoes out of my pig."
Nice.
Griffin was
Oh, okay, allegedly. I was gonna say, really? He actually really said
furious
that?
with his new American neighbors. They built their homes all over his sheep pastures. And besides, what right did they have to be here anyway? It was British territory. Lyman, on the other hand, swore the local government had assured him his land claims were legitimate. And so to him, the British were out of line. Look at that sick freak. In love with his pig. Isn't that just sick? Yeah, what a freak. Not like our love, Spuddy. Ours is all natural. Yep, just a man and his potato. Nothing wrong with that. But the tension between Lyman and Griffin was just about to explode. Huh? What the? Spuddy? All right, you damn dirty pig. That's the final
I see.
straw.
The pig war. Gotcha.
Lyman shot the pig. After
I think I'm going to stop it here then. 26 minutes, so it's got another 20 to go. So that even that with commentary, that would probably make it an hour-long video. So I think I'm going to stop it right here. 1852. So far, I'm really liking this. This is probably Oversimplified's best video. Hope you guys like it too. Again, I don't know much about this, so I'm a little scant on commentary, trying to throw in what I know about British North America at this point, Canada overall. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. I think I need to do a little bit more research on the geography, so I think I'm going to do that tomorrow. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. Anything that I missed, I'd be happy to shout it out in part 2. So check back in the next couple of days, and part 2 will be up for the Pig War Oversimplified as voted by you guys. Thank you all very much. Don't remember. Yeah, just don't remember. Just don't do it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate all your support, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.